Hi, I'm Adam Holwerda, and welcome back to This Book Exists. This episode, we're going to be talking about Bunny by Mona Awad. This book is about a girl named Samantha Heather Mackey who goes to Warren, a literary college. There's a cohort of women writers there that she is going to be a part of. She doesn't really mesh in at all with the other women writers. She is different from them. She's more cynical, more introverted, has a negative outlook on most of the things in her life, feels annoyed about everyone else's experience of becoming a writer at this writers university. So there are animals that are endemic to this Warren location. Big section of the animals are bunnies. In part of the book, there's, I'd say at the beginning, she's at this school and she's on the grounds and there's all these bunnies just running around, and it's made to seem as though there's so many of them. And I almost started to think as a reader, are these bunnies stand-ins for people, or are they people who've been turned into bunnies, etc.? And then it turns out that there's a lot of metaphorical and allegorical connection to Alice in Wonderland, to just like other... I'm trying to think what else? Alice in Wonderland. Okay, so the story revolves around this person's experience at this school, and the backstory of this person is that they come from a family that fell apart, and it seems like her mom died and her dad is in trouble with not the law but elements in his neighborhood or in his life where they're on the lookout for him. They're trying to find him. Ostensibly he owes a lot of money to people. So it seems like the main character is mentally in sort of an escapism mode, and that's how they relate to being a writer, I think, is like that they're using it for escapism, and that their work is pretty dark and their work is pretty moody and broody. And they go to this literary arts college called Warren, and it seems also that the process and the work of this workshop at the Warren University is also pretty moody and broody. But it's like they really seem to just go with it. And for example, there's like phrases that they use at this school, like the main professor character called Fosco, which I believe is a nickname for someone that they call Ursula. I don't know if it really matters. I will say, so the phrase is called tap the wound. So basically you're supposed to tap the wound in order to get your true words onto the page, right? There's that aspect of the story which is very literal. Like, she is at this college writing in her senior year a workshop semester, and then there's a thesis semester, and all the time while she's in this sort of situation, there are these other women who are in the workshop as well, and they have names, like nicknames as well as real names, which I thought was a nice thing to do, but also it meant that I had to remember two sets of names for each of the people. And I also think that the other women in the writer's workshop sort of function as a whole. Like, sure, there's a character called Duchess who's like the sort of ringleader of the bunnies, which is what the title of the book is coming from, this name that they all give each other, this group of women, these four women. They call each other Bunny, and when they're together, everything just becomes this mental creature that they exist as. And I don't know if that's like hard. It's hard to explain the mental creature aspect, but there's a part in the book when the main character is invited into the group of the bunnies, and she becomes this we. Like, everything in that part of the book is just written from the we, as though she is part of this other group of people, and then that group of people has created sort of an organism that are like thinking together, doing things together, working together. Every aspect of her other outside life that she used to have, where she was hanging out with a friend named Ava, who she really likes and is always trying to like get back to, is forgotten about. So there's this entire kind of metaphor of what happens when you're hanging out with this group of really upper crusty literati women who are like kind of representation, I think, of the publishing industry in this book. It's hard to talk about the book, I think, because it's highly metaphorical, it's highly allegorical. A lot of the plot and the things that happen in the book are not actually happening in the actual story, but in the character's mind's eye, in the character's, she's a lot of times worrying about if she should be saying this or that, and ends up saying very little. But we as readers, we get to read all of the thoughts and all of the things that go inside of the person's psyche as she's talking. The main character they have a backstory that they reference once in a while, but it's like not all the time. The location, the setting where the book takes place is just, I don't know, this like misty, foggy, animal-y backdrop that the main character doesn't like living there or going to school there, and her friend Ava really doesn't like it and thinks that everyone is horrible and annoying. Everyone's pretentious, everyone's entitled, everyone's rich, everyone's just like all these things that probably, if you add them up, right, are not going to create a good writer, because those people aren't going to be able to see the details or the things, the human experience. They're not going to have the human experience because the bunnies and the lion and the Fosco lady, like they're all out of touch. Like they're all just very out of touch, selfish. Oh, they think that they're so good and so important, and just the pretension, and like they're the arbiters of what's good, and they're the ones who are able to decide if you're a good writer or not, and it has nothing to do with some objective value. These women who are part of the bunny group are taking actual animals and transmogrifying them into these gruesome structures of men or boys that they're trying to have sex with. And these creatures are like almost people, but they're still pretty rabbit-like, and they're pretty fragile. If you ask one anything about themselves, their heads explode. And so these women are engaged in this drafting process all the time. It's what they call a workshop, and these drafts are people. When they don't work out right, one of the bunnies will take an axe and hatchet up that person. So that's also pretty gruesome. The main character is also a part of this, so they get brought into this bunny group and then become one of the people who was just like helping to conjure these rabbit boys. We spend a lot of the book trying to figure out how Samantha Heather Mackey relates to the other characters in the book, and she's not really a protagonist in the sense of she's making a lot of decisions and doing a lot of different things. She is more a passive protagonist, I would say. We're along with her as these things happen to her and around her at this college. So there's a professor that she got drunk with one night and told him a lot of stuff, and then they have a weird situation and everyone thinks that they hooked up, but they didn't. She doesn't know how to handle that. Also, there's a boy on campus that really likes her, but she doesn't really like him. And then there's her friend Ava, who is aloof and around sometimes, and they have a house that Samantha will visit and they'll hang out, and she really enjoys being around Ava. So like the whole plot revolves around what's happening to this person as they're attempting to finish their degree at this literary arts college. It's interesting how the metaphors work in the book, because I'm not sure fully that the metaphor fully works, right? Because it's also happening that they are writing and making fiction. And then there's a metaphor then that like fiction are these sorts of like men that are going to be like breadwinners or just like helping them get what they want, thinking about writing as a way to create little minions for you to get what you want, which I think is interesting, because I do think that there is like in the publishing industry this sense of books as products. Maybe your book is not amazing, but if a publishing company can put a good cover on that book and sell it and put it in a store and enough people buy it and it's monetized and commodified and it becomes this product and it gets people to go, oh, that's interesting or whatever. Maybe that's all you need. If we're creating these flawed humans out of bunny rabbits just by all getting in a room and deciding to, like, what if you had like a short story that sucked, but then you went to the publishing house and they were like, we're gonna all get in a room and decide that you're gonna lengthen this short story and turn it into a book that we can sell and put a cover on, and we'll make a movie out of it or something. And we just have taken this kind of like idea thing and unraveled it out until it's like a useful sort of thing in society to get us all what we want, which is like money and fame and power and like book signings, and we get to talk to people at like parties and be literati and this and that. I think that's maybe one of the ways in which the metaphor really does work. The book reminded me a lot of the publishing industry itself, in that the Bunny Group, this amorphous meta collection of writers that they all just agree with each other and love each other, and every piece of writing that anyone makes is, oh, the best piece of writing that anyone's ever read. I think that felt really true as a critique of the publishing industry. At some point, everything you've written becomes this veneer or this glow around you that prevents anyone from saying anything critical about anything anymore. And once you're in, everyone loves you and you're great and it's amazing and you're part of the club and you can go anywhere and talk to anyone and people will just like fawn over you as long as you have this status bubble of being a writer, of being like this published author. You're no longer going to have real criticism. And I think that's what the book is saying. And I also got the sense that part of the book was essentially calling the publishing industry out as like a, hey, I see what you're doing. Literally, I am calling you out and you have to publish it and call it amazing because of kind of the subject matter. So the publishers don't even realize that they're making fun of themselves by publishing the book. Yeah, and it's funny too, because even on the front here, there's, oh, Bunny, you are so genius, Margaret Atwood. Even that blurb is like a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that there is no criticism anymore. Like, it is just, no, we just accept no matter what. Genius, you're amazing, you're perfect, you're like, yeah. The thing that I'm thinking about more as a storytelling issue that I had with the book is that not a lot of the events in the book are very clear as to what's happening. A lot of the events are referred, it's like fear of an event happening that doesn't happen, right? Or I'm in this situation, I'm imagining all the things that might happen, but then something innocuous happens. There's a lot of this coming from the horror sort of focus of the book, is we're looking at the way that horror movies work and how sometimes there's a jump scare. And I'm reading into a lot of this, but also I did attend the keynote where she talked about using horror elements from films in books. I'm not going to give away the ending or anything, but those last 50 pages are what tied together the whole book for me. If you don't finish the book, you will have a very different idea of what this book was than if you finish it. Anytime there's certain characters who show up, you will think about those completely differently. Also, just this critique and horrification of the academia aspect of it all. Like, we're here to learn how to be writers, but really the process around writing is not really about that. It's about tapping the wound. It's about doing the work, or it's about holding space for something. I don't know. There's just like all this like fake bullshit in the things that we're trying to teach writers to think about. That's really well attacked in this book. It's taking the bullshit down a notch just while addressing it. So it's like very, very well done in that way. As far as other like gripes and stuff that I had about the book, I just thought the main character doesn't seem like she's in control of anything. She doesn't really seem like she's making decisions or doing any sort of like creation of what's happening. So I feel like that's also a powerlessness, but I think that also might just be a horror genre thing where like the main character is not really in control. There's other things going on and they're Sometimes they're in some fugue state attached to a four-headed monster. Yeah, what an interesting book. I won't talk about the character that shows up towards the end of the book, but I thought that was well done, and the reveals I felt as a reader a little bit out of control. Like I want to be in control of what's happening a little more, or like being able to predict what's going to happen, and I was unable to do that, which I think also worked well. I think a lot of these things you'd say this doesn't work very well as a novel or whatever, but as a horror film or as a horror story or something with like ambiance, where a lot of times you're in the dark or you're just a little bit uneasy or kept on an uneven keel, those things come through really well. It's very ethereal, it's very internal. I'm not sure how long I'm going to remember all the events or like what's going on in the book. Like I finished it yesterday and it's hard for me to even remember the main character's name. If you read it, let me know what you thought. The other thing is I am starting a writing Substack about my journey towards being a published author. That is it's called Notes from the Whole Wordiverse, and the Whole Wordiverse is kind of this universe of short stories and series of novels that I've been working on for 20 plus years, and now it's probably time to figure out how to actually get published and put my stuff in front of people. So that whole Substack it's a peek into the process of somebody going from couch to bookshelf, essentially. And we're going to be exploring everything on the way there. So like submitting, rejection, feedback, rewriting. There'll be excerpts from projects that I'm working on. So yeah, if you're interested, sign up for that. The link is going to be probably on the screen here or just down below. I was Adam Holwarda, and Bunny by Mona Awad exists.